talk of development, and they'll go there. If they spend their money on this
Okay.
one and nothing's going on, they'll wish they'd gone to where
Okay.
the action is.
All right.
As you recall, we were talking about those monies as protected purchases.
Yep.
Those areas that are vulnerable to near season development.
Yep. So they're not out looking just to be buying. I think they're kind of holding their powder in terms of protecting.
Oh, yeah, I think that's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
You asked earlier about Springbrook.
Yes.
Did you all pick up on your email of yesterday about Springbrook? I see some heads nodding at others. Well, basically, Springbrook Road will be closed through traffic between late March and into the summer for full road construction. Reconstruction of the Springbrook Road will have 2 travel lanes as well as the center. This is a finished out. Construction is part of the Newburgh W bypass. For nearly a year, neighbors have experienced major construction activities on the shoulders. Flagler's have been able to accommodate lane traffic while they work, beginning as early as the week of March 20th. That's next Monday. The work on Springbrook Road will move to the travel lanes and require hard closures at work zones 24 hours per day. Traffic will not be able to access past work zones. Detours will be in place and move periodically as the work moves along along Springbrook Road. The existing road will be removed in stages and will be unsafe to travel on. Even at night, the detours will be in place. Construction of the Springbrook Road will take several months with signed detours. The work will last into the summer months. Driveways to residences and businesses along Springbrook Road will be accessible, but may also require out of direction at times for safety. Watch for detours using 8th Street, 2nd Street, Fernwood, and 99W to move safely through the area. And that's what came out. They sent it out yesterday morning at 6:40. So if you're on their mailing list, you should have received this or you may find it.
And that was ODOT, correct?
That's an ODOT,
Yeah.
Department of Transportation email, e-blast.
Mr. Mayor, that's the section of Springbrook south
From
of
99 south down to where it angles around to,
Gotcha.
back to 219, yes.
Got it, thank you.
So that takes care of that one.
So, anything more on that? I know it's been a while since we've had a roundtable about what's happening in various jurisdictions, and I want to get to that, but I don't want to stop if you got questions on where we are. I'm going to start out a little bit on the conversation about jurisdictions and start with the Confederated Tribe. I know Denise had a special point she wanted to talk about, and I want to make sure we have that time, so go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the, and I don't know if anyone else has been involved in any of the naming or of the bridge from Dundee or the county.
The overpass over here at the end of town?
Yeah. So we've been working with ODOT, the tribe's been working with ODOT on the naming. So we're requesting a letter of support from the Parkway Committee. The letter would be submitted to ODOT and the Geographical Place Naming Board for their consideration and would accompany our naming request documents. We would like that by mid-April, if we could get it. And the name that they're proposing is Chehalem.
The Chehalem Bridge?
Yeah. And that, Tualatin Kaliupuya, that means the outside place.
The outside place?
Yeah. So, in the native language. So,
You said 12 and what?
the Tualatin Kaliupuya language, that means the outside place.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Chehalem means the outside place.
I always wondered.
So I know we're working with the Parks Department on some of the trail, they're working with our Cultural Resource Department and Mike Ragsdale and some other folks requested that we,
Now, which parts department?
I'm assuming whoever is doing the trails that are being proposed, we
That's
got approached.
Chehalem.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got approached at the town hall meeting when we were there in Newburgh about helping with some trail signs or names or whatever that are gonna be going along. I don't know exactly where those trails are, but they said, is there some trails being put in by
The project
there?
includes trails, trail system.
Right,
The trail in Dundee would be coming probably, potentially up Fifth or so, and it's supposed to go through the Viewmont Park on the north side of town.
yeah.
And then in Harvey Creek Trail and down, so it wouldn't be really over here, but.
So our cultural resource manager sits on Chehalem Museum Heritage Center board and also sits on that board with Mike Ragsdale, so they're collaborating on that level, but we need to get this name submitted timely so that we can get it through the processes that it needs to go through.
So the request would be for a letter of support to,
From-
and it's this overpass right here in Dundee, and have it be designated as the
Chehalem Bridge,
Chehalem Bridge.
or overpass, or, I mean, those things come into play, because I know when we named the Tillicum Bridge, it was, you know, some people wanted a crossing, someone didn't want to do that because Portland's known for city of bridges, so those conversations all come into play when they're making those decisions, but.
Sounds
I
good to
need to
me.
consult my counsel.
Being from Newburgh, I think it's fine. I don't know whether Dundee would have the same
Yeah.
feeling.
I mean, I gotta find out what their opinion is before I'd say anything about where I stand.
Do you have a personal reaction?
My personal reaction is I'd like to give my council an opportunity to give input.
Denise, is there anybody objecting to that name that you know of? I mean, that seems like very natural to me.
No,
Or
not
any
at all.
I can't see anyone objecting, but are there any
Alternatives.
alternative competitive names that have been offered that you know of?
We haven't heard of any so far, but those are all things, and once we get this information submitted to ODOT and the geographical naming board, then those, I mean, there could be somebody that's submitting something else, but.
Mr. Mayor, Bob, do you think your folks would be okay with that name?
Not my business.
What's- Oh, well, yeah, that's a good point.
It's easier for
Sorry.
the rest of us.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's why I'm
Well-
like, I gotta talk to some people here.
So, I mean,
Number one is ODOT's route.
right,
Number
Right.
two is in your territory.
yeah, good point.
And you're dealing with their board, so. They're,
Yeah,
Right.
and it's in the ceded lands of the Confederate Tribes of Grand Rock, so, which were the first people for this area. So that's where a lot of that stuff comes into play.
the only problem with that is once the camel gets snowed under the tent, then how many other little crossings we gotta wanna name?
Thought they named everything nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're getting hit with that.
Christian names,
We're getting a lot of requests for things like that.
You thinking of the Andrews Bridge, is that?
Maybe in the shape of maple bark?
Hey, that's not,
Madison County.
Yeah, just, but one observation, I think that the choice of the name is a good one because it ties in so well with Chehalem Creek, ties in. I mean, we got the
Right.
Chehalem Valley, the Chehalem Chamber, just a lot of things, so it's not like it's a name out there that said, where did that come from? It really fits, into our whole region and area, so.
Well, I think it's very fitting for the region.
Yes.
I mean, people are gonna know, oh, that must be down by Newburgh or
yeah,
Dundee there.
absolutely.
You know,
I mean,
you're gonna
it's not
identify.
my choice, but it makes perfect sense to me.
And I guess with respect to the Dundee City Council, I think they can certainly weigh in. I think the question is if we wait, if you need to do that, if we don't take action until till middle or April, is that an issue? If we were to wait to see, to take the input from Dundee?
When do you
Yeah,
need
as
the
long,
letter?
well, they want it by the middle of April, mid-April. So
When are we
hopefully we
meeting
can
next?
get a
I
letter
can definitely
before
bring
that.
it up Tuesday.
You could bring it up
Well,
Tuesday.
maybe we could pass a resolution here that unless there's no objection
Yeah.
from Dundee, that we proceed with drafting a letter. I'd be happy to make that.
Yeah, because we meet the 20th.
I'll
so-
second.
Okay.
And I can have, we can send out, a letter talking about the, you know, what it means and that kind of stuff,
You
so,
wrote that over to Rob so we can
Yeah.
have a meeting or something.
yeah,
I mean, our agenda's coming out today, but still, he can throw it in.
okay.
Did you make a motion?
I will. I'll make a motion that unless there's objection from Newburgh City Council. Dundee, I'm sorry, it's early. That the Parkway Committee will pass a resolution to issue a letter in support of the naming of that crossing per what the tribe's recommendation is.
Did you read what I just wrote down? Thank you. Okay, so is there a second?
Second.
You got a second?
There you go. That's fine. As long as we get a second.
Is there more discussion? Okay, so the motion is that the committee would approve the naming, well, not approve, but would support the naming of that bridge, Shale. Is it gonna be bridge or Shale?
I think it's a Cheyenne Bridge.
Shale Bridge, and authorize me to write a letter of support thereof, subject to input from the Dundee City Council. If you have objection, then we'll have a further conversation.
Yeah, that's the point I wanted to get to. Yeah, what's the alternate situation there? So
Well, the alternate is if the Dundee City Council has, considerable concern and says no, we'll continue our discussion then at the April meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're, if they get other requests, like when we dealt with this with the Tillicum Crossing, they actually, many people submitted requests for that,
I can
naming of
imagine.
that. And then it came narrowed down to 4 that were selected, and then there was kind of a voting process, and we actually ended up getting
Okay.
Tillicum,
Nothing's easy.
So you've heard the motion, and we've got a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, anything further on Denise?
No, I think that's,
So let's go back and start with Dundee. Things, anything you want to talk about in terms of just what's happening in Dundee on this transportation with the 99W?
Well, 99W continues to be a pain for everybody in Dundee, especially to their shock absorbers and tires. So yeah, I've been trying to stay on ODOT about that, and in fact, I just sent an email out to Cole, who's in charge of maintenance. Like, do you have a standard, like width, depth, length, volume, so that I know when I should jump you? Basically, I didn't say that to him. So I've been trying to stay on that all winter because it's been pretty hard on the roads here in Dundee, and it's been pretty hard on cars. Other than that, we've got our streetscape project out to bid, and so we're hoping to actually assign a contractor on that early next month, and then start the project nearly immediately. So that'd be pretty nice to see happening around here. We successfully got ODOT to change out lighting fixtures at the bypass at the Fishhook intersection. They got LED fixtures for pretty much the whole thing, and then they put these Saglins sodium, high pressure sodiums down in there. Well, when we get our whole streetscape done, we're gonna have LED lights, all dark sky compliant, and then you have this giant exploding glow at the end of town. So we got them, they're changing out the fixtures at the intersection to be flat lens LED, but there's a couple right at the approach, so like basically where just as it starts to come straight, and it is straight, that those are gonna stay the sag lens, high pressure sodiums. I think the deal is they have so much of a cluster of lights at the intersection that they could afford losing a few lumens in that area, but they're scattered on the way up, so they had to keep their giant ugly fixtures up there. I think in time that'll change. There's pretty much a plan that within 10 years all those high pressure sodiums are going out. So eventually it'll happen. So that's that part. We've got our urban renewals on track, getting things done. And we're hoping that, in the end, that's really going to help us bring more people into town and stuff like that, which I'll report some more on that maybe next time or time after when I get more time to play all that game. And that's basically it for transportation in Dundee at this point.
Questions?
Did anybody see the news, the Channel 6 news clip on the bypass?
No.
Oh, you guys did it? Oh, it was pretty good. They had some of the winery,
They interviewed Ted too?
Yeah.
Sean
Yeah.
was there, Representative Noble was on.
Yeah, it was interesting. I talked to Ted afterward. They called him randomly out of nowhere. Showed up to his house, I guess, and
Yeah.
did an interview. And he kind of asked them, what was the focus of their report. And they didn't even really know at the time. They were just gathering a bunch of information, then they were going to put it together and figure out how it fit.
That's great.
I felt like that, they touched on the traffic, the wineries talked about the, the business aspect of things and the importance of completing it. I thought it was
No, it was a good argument.
I thought it was good.
It was not offensive, it was not derogatory, it was not, saying this is a boondoggle or anything of that nature. No, I think it reinforced the need.
I did too, I felt that too.
Completing the bypass, not necessarily the next phase of the completion.
There you go. Look good though.
As it relates to the bypass, I just wanted to report out that Kelly Mankey and myself met with Dave Tuesday morning just to make sure that as we're going through our budget process that we put money aside for the lobbying activity for the coming fiscal year. And so I know many of you from a city perspective are putting those budgets together. And so we proactively reached out to make sure that was at least in our preliminary preparing of the budget. Outside of the Parkway, just to let you know, Monday we're having groundbreaking for an area of the city that's called the Alpine and the Northeast Gateway, and so we're doing groundbreaking on that, and that's going to be a $4.5 million expansion of an area that's very industrialized right now, and that's going to become kind of like our festival streeting and some real build out in McMinnville. And we're able to do that with a transportation bond that we passed and then urban renewal dollars to do that. So again, about $4.5 million, and that groundbreaking will take place 11 o'clock on Monday. So some good things from that perspective.
Great, questions? I very much did appreciate that I had a chance to meet with Mayor Hill and with Councilor Mankey, and she extended her regrets, but she got on an airplane a couple of days ago and went to a warmer climate, so she'll see us next month. But it was a very good conversation about thinking about what does it look like for a lobbying budget next year. And I would just say, on its face, you'd say, well, the legislature is going to be hopefully done somewhere around the first part of July, and so the double hit, state and federal going on at the same time would kind of go away. But never forget that next February or January, the legislature has its short session, and so who knows what will happen in the transportation bill. And this law, the legislature could feasibly move over into the special session. So we'll keep monitoring that. We'll have a better idea as we go along, but we'll have those discussions about lobbying budgets some more next month. Mr. Mayor.
Well, we have a tough job ahead of us. Isn't that right, Joe?
Sure.
Tough job. TUF, transportation or transportation utility. We are working with a special ad hoc committee that is now doing the final touches on that to present to the council a utility fee for the maintenance of our streets, preservation and maintenance of our streets. and working on specific projects, much like they did with their particular bond issue, so that this project will be selling work, not just asking for a blank check. We've been working with the transit people on identifying bus shelter areas, in particular one on 99 in the area of Sherry's, the old Mercury Shopping Center area where Parkway is. I think that's been identified. I brought to your attention earlier the Springbrook closure. By the way, there will be activity in Newburgh on the week of 4/8. We have our Camellia Festival, and as of Monday afternoon, there will be a Senate Concurrent Resolution 26 will be before Senator Burdick's Rules Committee to designate Newburgh as a community city of Oregon. And that's a little interesting little piece that goes along with that. Legislative action, I have some things I wanted, if I may digress with a couple of pieces that I picked up on the other. For the transportation, there was, last night, I got some mixed up emails came through, finally got it straightened out. Last night, there was, at the same time, all four of the study groups for the transportation package were meeting. And then they're coming together on Monday night, the 20th, for the first meeting, the first open meeting of the Transportation Commission. So that's still there. But it's interesting, the Newburgh Dundee bypass has come up related to the metropolitan congestion, the one that is dealing with congestion in the metropolitan area. And it is being looked at very positively. It's not a negative saying, well, you can't do this, but it's being identified as one of those things that will help mitigate some of the congestion areas, and recognizing that down into this far, and probably as far as the, at least the casino, is the value and the congestion that exists on this travel shed of 99W and 18. So it is being discussed, and it is not being, as I understand it, it's not being negatively discussed. So, but it's there, it's on the table, and that's, I think that's really quite important. For the congestion, I'm looking at my notes here. Oh, the word I get in talking to 4 or 5 different of our legislators, and not just our own representatives, but some of the others, this Northwest Passage, Representative Vile, this is his first year, comes out of the Seward area, they introduced this bypass, this other bypass, is not getting any traction. That was just to get it out there. Somewhere down the line, $12 to $23 billion of construction. It has nothing in the way of traction in the immediate future, as far as these legislators are concerned.
Where's the money coming from?
Well, that's one of them. And do we have other concerns?
We have a lot of other
Yeah,
concerns.
the Transportation Committee is not giving it any credibility at all. It was, I think, part of that was a promise to something somewhere along the line. In the area of transportation, there's some things that are being thrown around, and I'll just share these that are coming out at the state level. Perhaps a state excise tax on the sale of new vehicles and adult bicycles. Now, those that are involved in any discussion on transportation, as we look at our multimodal operations, is the bicycles. Quote, they're always getting a free ride. So this particular one is looking at adult bikes, not children's, the little ones, but adult bikes. Tolling, bonding, private-public partnerships are being looked at again. When they're looking at the areas of revenue, if they go into bonding, you can get a revenue stream and then you can go into bonding. Okay. Right now, the discussion is looking at about 1/3 modernization, 2/3 preservation. These are what are being bandied around. None of these are facts. there may be, overall tax, 3%, forget it. 5%, maybe. 20%, absolutely not. But it seems like they're kind of landing in the discussions around 10% gasoline or fuel tax increase, be it in the neighborhood of 10%.
10 cents or 10
10
cents?
10 cents. There may be a surcharge for metro area and possibly other MPOs, that they may add in surcharges for those. And there's, again, something along the line that I think you were talking about at one time. It's the funding and/or the bonding could be done in a phase-in or through an indexing type thing. That's being discussed. There's also a statewide payroll tax being discussed to fund transit. And a 1% transit statewide payroll tax would generate, it's estimated, somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million for transit to start with. And I indicated earlier that in these discussions, the Newburgh-Dundee bypass has been in the discussions and not in a derogatory, but in a very positive way. And I have one other one. Are you going to see Commissioner Prindisich in the next day or so?
Not
You're closer to him than I am.
I don't want to get too close to it if he's still sick, but I'll be in contact, I can get it to him, yes.
Interestingly enough, and this is kind of a challenge to Yamhill County, ODOT in Tillamook County did a seismic pilot project on Tillamook County roads. And it's quite a project that they had. So would you pass this on to,
I will.
To Commissioner Prindisich, so that he can see what's going on in that? And I think that just about concludes what I have right now.
The seismic thing reminds me of something I came across recently. Kind of beyond the scope of this entity, but just made me think about it, that our roads and bridges are getting severely beaten up by what they call super haulers. These are dump trucks that have like 6 sets of wheels, and they're allowed to carry like almost 80,000 pounds in one container, which even on 6 sets of wheels is too much weight in one place.
Right.
And so, it's a hazard to roads and people, and it's going on all over the state.
They have it in our residential streets. Sure does.
Can I, a couple other items and stuff. So we talked about the transit. So the issue there is that since it's right there at the intersection of the highway and Springbrook, so we've been working with ODOT and the property owner about locating this new shelter there. Kind of fits in with the transit idea, but we've had some challenges back and forth and had to get Tim and some others involved. That part's been resolved. All up and down Springbrook, we are getting challenges as we're having closures, with people are complaining about not notice to them about when the closure's happening. We think we've got that resolved. So we've got a person that does community engagement and with ODOT. And that's just one that's going to have to keep going so we don't get bad press along there as more of the closures happen. It was with a couple of business parking lots and then some apartments. It's being resolved, but ideally that we got to keep our eye on the ball. The other one has to do with, we have over really 260 acres of industrial land on the waterfront, and that's fine, it's the old mill. But there is a business, been identified, it's not been announced, they're completing their due diligence on the property. It is zoned, and we've told them, and they've agreed to the new owners to keep industrial. So that's a big focus, and they asked us about, just in a general way, what about bypass and the connections to that? So we're keeping them informed about, so far, people are comfortable. We'll have to do, and it's in the plans with ODOT about improving that road of access to theirs. And that's one that, because can easily be a $350 million development in there. The planning for that is occurring this next month. So the mayor's got a citizens committee that's working on that. We've invited the new owners to be a part of that. And again, no one's announced, they're still doing their due diligence. But the reality of a large business, pretty big investment, we want to keep them in the loop. And as soon as they announce, my suggestion is, we invite them to come here at least to sit, and so you can hear what's going on. Also, as part of that, we brought, the governor helped us. We had 8 agencies that came in and sat down. We've been doing, what is the waterfront going to look like? And the bypass is in the middle of that. So there was ODOT there. Also is DEQ and stuff. The Grand Ron is gone, but part of that has to do with, because SHPO is part of that discussion of historic places and the creeks and names. Okay, that's fine. But if you remember quite a while ago, the whole discussion about the landfill and about, potential conflicts with the bypass, that was pushed off for a while, and good, so it wasn't a distraction. We've just re-entered the conversation about the landfill itself, its closure, and over the years, because it's not officially closed, even though it's 20 years since the last fill was on there. So we're saying we do not want to in any way, cause any conflict with the bypass, but we've re-engaged that conversation between DEQ and then the county about the landfill closure. So just so you know that, and everyone knows this doesn't belong any place except in our discussions, but we took the opportunity because we're planning the whole 400 acres there in addition to the industrial land. And the only other part is, because we were talking about a couple meetings ago about the Oregon Clinic, that is working its way through. It's moving forward. We're just completing a partition of the property where it's going to go, which is right in between Providence and the Friends View, and that's with the Ward family and the Gluger development. So that's making its way, so we're pleased with that. There's another development that we think finally is going to be resolved, which is Graymore. Doesn't affect the bypass except that it sits right there at Rex Hill and going through, and I think we're still on track.
It's still positive on the
It's
Graymore?
still positive. Last Friday was talking about mediation. We've been going through a big issue between DSL and the Corps about mediation of the creek. We think hopefully finally that's been resolved, but the governor's office has been really good. Okay. That keeps that moving forward and gives us options if someone wants to go to locate a new business, that we've got places for them and don't have a conflict. We believe in potential development while right-of-way is being discussed.
Good.
Joe, does Braemar own that land yet, or they just have some type of an option to purchase?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Yeah.
speculation.
Yeah.
It's an option.
Yeah.
That's typically how Barry operates, which is fine. I mean, that's a great business model.
Oh, and I'm sorry, 2 items that does affect this. One is there's been recent in the discussion about our transfer to Alton Valley Fire and Rescue. The discussion, and this is a plus for the bypass, is, and came in some hearings about the repeated, congestion on this part of the road into Dundee, where ambulance have a very difficult time having to run on the wrong side of the road to get through here. So there's a lot of interest and support and discussion in fire and rescue service about please get the bypass done so our ambulance can get through here, particularly getting into Dundee and getting back to Providence. That was a plus. And then with McMinnville, we went up to PSU this week, and how this plays in, what the mayor was talking about, discussions in Metro about congestion. The projections are now out about population growth. We're growing faster than the state, fine. It's still not huge, but part of that discussion goes to when they start, as they're starting to allocate the growth, and we go now, why are we seeing growth and stuff? Seems pretty obvious. But how it fits into this, and particularly in McMinnville, is that saying the growth is because of the high cost in Metro, it's pushing it here, and then how does the bypass fit in that growth continuing down through the valley to McMinnville? And right now, some of the projections are that, and that stuff is not science. we'd love it to be, is saying, well, more of the growth is going to happen, continue in Newburgh, even though there's a lot of growth coming in the county, but part of that, the unspoken is, well, until the bypass comes in, people kind of get clogged here, so they won't continue the rest of the way down to McMinnville. Because it seems like we're growing about the same time, but they're putting a little more of the estimates in Newburgh before McMinnville. And I think that plays into the bypass of saying, if we want to distribute this growth, as we believe it's happening naturally, get the bypass so people can actually get down to some of the areas where there's affordable housing. Those are current, that's out, and it'll be, you know, I think public here, you'll start seeing the numbers. More ammunition, we're talking to the legislators, you know.
It's those unintended consequences of
Yeah,
the metro upon,
yep.
okay? Questions?
We've heard that same message, and you can even extrapolate that thought process to commercial development until the bypass is, the whole bypass is completed. It's going to have an effect on commercial development in McMinnville, and so you're going to probably get a little more of that just because of ability to get to market.
And I think the population one is our tied to the county. They could care less what commercial we get, but if we're saying it's coming down here, if the funnel stops, they know that the growth is pushing it here. So the more that we can accommodate that growth as part of the whole scheme, the less pressure there may be on Metro to do, you know, take other action. So that should help us with allies.
You mentioned that waterfront, the 260 acres, they want to keep that industrial, is that correct?
Yes. The city has asked them to do that, and they agree.
Other questions, comments? Excellent meeting, so we will meet again on the, what is it, the 20th? April.
It can't be April, that's all.
Mary?
It is. It is. By the way, I love our new house next door coming up.
Oh, good.
Thanks a lot. Those weeds don't have to be mowed.
That's good. And we're going to start one on the other side of those.
Oh, Todd, that's good.
Spring right on the bottom of ODOT.
Oh, yeah.
Scott, you're on the transit, anything you want to comment? My apologies, I just.
I think the mayor mentioned some of the stuff, but we are meeting to, talking to Cynthia. She is putting together a planning committee group, and she's going to each city, and we'll be including additional people on that planning committee. The mayor gave us some names yesterday to be included in that. I passed those on to Cynthia, and we'll be moving forward. I know she's not even the mayor knows this, but apparently we have some, and I asked her to call Joe, but they're moving ahead on doing some rerouting of the buses and that, and taking out some shelters and adding in some shelters, and apparently there's one shelter that's going to be removed because the buses don't go by there anymore. So, but that's a big issue as to how are we going to keep transit and especially buses keep them relevant, because unless it's done right, you might as well not do it at all, because people won't ride the buses, and then you've got a bunch of buses riding around empty. And so that study is in the process as to make sure that, and there's a lot of money being raised for more buses, and there's lots of stuff that going on, but they're really looking at our city in particular as to whether or not we need to reformulate the way we work. So that's something that is all being in the process right now.
Questions? Thank you. I didn't realize that you'd gotten an extra opportunities.
Sign
Maybe.
it.
All right, then we stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks, Matt was, did all that. And again, one.